to punk. So it's this idea,
Pirates
and
of the
we'll
Punk.
talk
Okay.
about how rooted it is in just a minute. But it's this very edgy, urban, but island-centric style, which is incredibly unique, and I think it's getting a lot of interest from an industry that we might have seen everything, but it's very new in the London
Interesting.
fashion industry. He's getting a lot of great press and interest from that.
That's awesome. I love it. So are you gonna delve into a bit how the island, how it incorporates into that?
Yeah, I'm going to hand over to
Yeah.
Maya because I
All
don't want
right.
to hog the microphone.
No, yeah. So I think there's a lot of really interesting elements of Jawara's design that I think lend themselves really well to continuing conversation and dialogue, and an exciting education program. The first one is, what Natalie mentioned, which is this sort of pirates to punk aesthetic, where Jawara is really interested in people who are just unapologetically themselves, who push the mold, who are people who are incredibly open and sort of no, like unapologetic, right? And I think sort of embracing that aesthetic is going to be really interesting for just the expressive opportunities of art. So for young people who are maybe growing up in a space where they feel, when you're a teenager, sometimes you just feel uncomfortable in yourself and like nobody understands you and you don't fit in. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity for young people to see this type of work, and that the celebration of people who are pushing those boundaries, to really feel that they can express themselves through visual art, whether it's fashion or whether it's painting or whether it's sculpture or performance or any way that people choose to express themselves. Another thing is that Jawar is really interested in circularity in fashion. So as Natalie mentioned, he's reusing these fabrics and materials with this sort of slashed and cut and pinned style. And it's all about sort of making use of every part of the fabric, not sting anything, and thinking about sustainability in fashion and in garment making. And I think it's going to be great to talk about the environmental side of this as well. How do we repurpose materials and create these wearable pieces of art that both, allow us to move forward into fashion, but also ensure that we are caretaking our environment as well. Then another part of that is, of course, just sort of fashion design as an industry, I suppose. So exploring even Jawara's career journey will be really interesting for young people who want to get into the creative industries. So we are going to be doing a digital interview with him where he talks about his journey within this industry. And hopefully that will really, again, inspire young people in Cayman who want to explore fashion or creative industries, to think about how they can use their context and their history and their personal interests to as a platform for creating that kind of career. So there's a lot of really interesting angles that you can look at this exhibition, this collection from. Even just, how tactile it is. We have a room in the back of the exhibition, which is like an archive room, where you've got images, a whole wall of images of Jawara's inspirations, Polaroid shots from backstage at his Fashion Week shows where he's sort of styling and dressing the models, interview videos with him. And that space, there are these fabric curtains that you can walk into, and you actually get to touch and feel the types of fabrics that he's using within his practice. So just, the ability to kind of, I guess, physically engage with his work in this show is really cool. And I think is going to be exciting for people who are tactile learners and come into that space and really want to sort of physically engage with artwork as well. So there's so many different ways that you can look at this from. And I think that's what makes it really exciting in terms of developing a program for it.
I love it. I love the many angles of this. The one question that keeps popping in my head, though, he's repurposing his paintings into the...
He's doing all sorts of things. So it's a great segue into kind of, Maya mentioned this wall of inspirations. And I think Jawara is very keen to sort of put his Caribbean and particularly Caymanian heritage first in bringing back these traditions of repurposing and recycling. And, if we think about Cayman in the 1950s, that was just a thing everybody did. And what's really great is you're able to go upstairs to the National Gallery collection and see rag rugs and see different textiles that are the product, again, of this idea of recycling and repurposing, which was very, very much part of our traditions. We may have lost it more recently, with the influx of global products and produce, but certainly we're weaving back to that now in the world that we're living in, and thinking about how we can be more sustainable. So that is fundamentally at the core of collections. There are other inspirations like National Collection itself, so artists from the National Gallery's collection, people like the Native Sons, Nasara Sukhu, Bendel Hydes, have all been major inspirations to his work as well. So you can actually go upstairs, and there are still about 30 artworks on display with a little sticker that says this is a piece that he's been directly inspired by. So all three of the gallery, the National Gallery, include part of this experience. And as you said, he is then taking those inspirations, making them paintings, also just repurposing actual other clothing and pieces of fabric. He does both. And then you'll see evidence of that and walk around the exhibitions. And there are 3 different exhibitions with slightly